When I was 10, my parents took me to visit my great-grandmother's old mountain house. The place was huge. Creaking floors, narrow hallways, wooden walls that smelled of dust and time. But the strangest thing was the door at the very end of the upper floor. It looked normal, except for one detail. There was no handle, just a flat wooden surface, as if the door wasn't meant to ever open. My mom said, "It's just a storage room, don't touch it. Nothing interesting inside." But that night I heard footsteps coming from behind the door. Soft ones, bare feet. Then scratching. Then a quiet voice muffled by wood.
"It's cold here."
I hid under the blanket until morning. No one believed me. The next night, I set a glass against the door and pressed my ear to it. At first, nothing. Then I heard breathing, heavy, adult, right behind the door. And then...
"Can you see my eye?"
I jumped back. Something dark pressed up against the bottom gap under the door. I called my parents, but when they came, the hallway was silent. On the third night, I sat with a flashlight on the floor, shining the beam into the gap. Dust, empty space. Then something moved. Slowly, a pale face slid into view. A boy's face, hairless. Huge black eyes, smiling too wide. "Let me out," he whispered.
"I've been waiting so long."
The house suddenly shuddered. Light flickered. The door slammed from the inside so hard that cracks spread across the wall. I ran screaming. In the morning, the door was wide open. Inside, dust boxes empty. But on the floor were tiny barefoot footprints leading out into the hallway. Now every time I visit that house, I avoid that hallway entirely. Because at night, the door never stays shut anymore. And sometimes I hear light footsteps wandering outside my old room, followed by a whisper.
"You let me out."
I moved into the cheapest apartment I could find. The building was old, walls thin, floors uneven. The landlord told me the apartment below mine was empty. But the first night, I heard knocking from under the floor, slow, rhythmic, like someone tapping the ceiling of the empty unit. Then came a scraping noise. Then what sounded like crying. Annoyed, I tapped back 3 times. Immediately, something tapped back in the same pattern. The next night, I heard footsteps, but they were wrong. Not steady, more like a limp, a dragging step. Back and forth, pacing endlessly. I asked the landlord about it. He frowned. That apartment's been sealed since 2011. No one lives there. I didn't believe him. One evening, I found the door downstairs slightly open. Cold, stale air drifted out. Inside was darkness. Dust everywhere, but the floor had a perfect circular trail worn into it, as if someone had been pacing the same circle for years. At the center of the room was an old armchair. Facing away from me, someone sat in it, a thin figure, head bowed. Hello?" I whispered. No response. I stepped closer and noticed the arms. Longer than they should be. Skin gray. Fingers twitching. When I spoke again, the figure turned its head, but it had no face. Just blank skin. No eyes, no nose. Only a thin mouth stretching into a wide, unnatural smile. I bolted up the stairs. The door slammed shut behind me. That night, the pacing continued beneath my floor. But the next night, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy, coming upward. And now, sometimes when I lie in bed, I hear breathing behind the wall right next to my head. Deep, slow, waiting. My friend and I used to camp in the woods often, just for fun. Campfire, a tent, music, normal stuff. One weekend we found a clearing we'd never seen before. Rusty metal poles were stuck in the ground, lined in a strange pattern. The old villagers told us,
"That place was used to lead livestock, not all of it living."
We laughed it off. That night around 1 a.m. we heard a bell. A tiny metal bell ringing softly in the distance. Must be cows, my friend said. But there hadn't been livestock there for decades. The bell rang again, closer. And then we saw them walk out from the trees. Tall, thin shapes. Not human, not animal. Something in between. They had skull-like heads, elongated limbs, and rusted little bells hanging from their necks. Their eyes were human. They moved slowly, grazing the ground with their fingers, swaying like cattle. But watching us closely, one of them approached me. Its breath smelled like dirt and rain. It tilted its head and spoke with a voice that sounded like the wind through a hollow log. "You are not from here." "Then I'm just camping," I whispered. Knelt, dragged a long finger across the soil and drew a circle around us. "Do not step out, do not look back." Then all of them froze, turned, and walked back into the woods. We stood still for minutes, not moving. Then my friend glanced down and whispered, "Dude, we're inside the circle." Suddenly footsteps echoed from the forest. Dozens of them. Heavy, approaching. We ran until our lungs burned. Didn't stop until we reached the highway. Now I live in the city, but sometimes at night I still hear a faint bell ringing. And yesterday morning, I found a chalk circle drawn outside my apartment door.